Zack Films compilation by
Surf on a tsunami. You might think that you could ride it for miles, but tsunamis don't curl like surf waves. Instead, they shoot up like a wall of water, swirling with rocks and dead animals. By the time it hits land, it can also carry entire trees and buildings. So even if you were an Olympic surfer, you would still be dragged under the water. Coco sat with her caretaker, slowly shaping her hands into signs, learning words. Then, one day, she signed something new. She wanted a cat. So they brought her a tiny gray kitten. The moment she saw him, she held him gently to her chest, cradling him like a baby. And using sign language, she named him All Ball. She brushed his fur, carried him around her room, and signed over and over, Coco, love, Ball. But one morning, the kitten slipped outside, and it was hit by a car. When they broke the news to the gorilla, she mourned it with loud wails. And when they asked her about the cat later, she only signed one single word, cry. He climbed onto the table by the railing, and his friends pulled him back down. But when he did it again, people just filmed him as he jumped overboard. You see, he was at his graduation party when he was given the dare. But after someone threw him a lifesaver, he swam away, disappearing into the ocean. Now, the ship was in an area usually filled with aggressive sharks. And when the video of him jumping was posted online, people started to notice a dark, blurry shape near him. The crew searched for 2 days, but he was never found. The doctor said he had a deadly disease, so he started chemo and weekly blood transfusions. And as the years passed, the treatment made him lose all his energy. He was stuck in his parents' basement while he prepared them for his death. But years later, another doctor got suspicious when he took the man's blood. And soon, the truth was confirmed. He never had the disease to begin with. The first doctor would lie to patients, charging them for treatments they didn't actually need. He was eventually fired, and the man stopped chemo, returning to a normal life. He inhaled the toy traffic cone when he was 7 years old, and for 40 years, he forgot about it. But as he grew older, he started to cough. Doctors noticed his right lung was getting stiff, and when they shone a light down his airways, they found a suspicious shadow. They told him he had a serious tumor and operated quickly, but instead, they found the toy traffic cone. And after removing it, the man's cough went away. He lowered the chunk of meat straight into a man's open stomach, and inside, the acid began softening and breaking the meat apart. You see, years earlier, a fur trader had survived a gunshot wound, but the bullets left a hole in his stomach that would never close. Now, back then, people thought the stomach crushed food up like a grinder, and the surgeon realized he could use this hole to figure out how the stomach actually worked. So he dropped meat and vegetables inside, then pulled them back out to see how far they broke down. Then he drained stomach acid with a siphon and tested it in glass vials. And his experiments proved that digestion was powered by stomach acid, not by grinding food.
That's so stupid.
He was collecting shellfish when a 10-foot shark came out of nowhere and clamped its jaw around his head. And soon he was halfway down the shark's throat, but he was wearing a lead-lined vest, stopping the creature from biting him in two. As the shark struggled to swallow him, the man reached up and jabbed it right in the eye with a chisel. This forced it to let go just long enough for him to wriggle out and swim to the surface. She rolled down the window, and the wind whipped her long hair into the steering wheel, wrapping the strands tight around the spokes. She tried to yank it free, but as she pulled her head, the strands of hair made the wheel turn, and the car moved into the other lane, right into oncoming traffic. The car hit another head-on, She was rushed to the hospital but ended up dead. He put on the device, and a small camera on the front recorded what he looked at. That
What?
video was sent into the glasses, which had two tiny screens, one
Why?
for each eye.
Why?
These screens increased the contrast and made the image sharper, making
Is he
smaller
colorblind?
details become bigger.
Is he
You see, he was
colorblind?
born with a disease that slowly destroyed the cells that let light in. So light and dark blended together, turning everything into a gray blur. And by the time he was 18, he was legally blind. But when he put on this device, it separated light from dark, and he was able to see his wife and kids for the very first
What?
time. The base
How
is
did he do
bolted
that?
into the ceiling, a long wire is hung down, and a heavy ball is attached to the bottom. When you pull the ball to the side and let go, it swings back and forth in a line. But Earth is always slowly turning, and everything attached to it, the walls, the ceiling, and the mount holding the pendulum, all turn with the planet. But the ball doesn't move with the room. So, as Earth slowly spins underneath, the floor slides under the ball's straight line, making the swing path look like it's twisting around the room. Meaning it's not the ball that's rotating, it's the Earth turning beneath it. If you screw a handle onto each side of a bicycle wheel and wrap a string around your hand before connecting it to the handle, it'll just drop down when you let go of it. But if you spin the wheel really fast, the speed keeps it going in one direction, while the spinning stops gravity from pulling it down immediately. And because the rope and gravity tug at the wheel in different directions, instead of tipping over, the wheel would twist to one side. And for a while, it would balance itself in midair, looking like it's defying gravity. The bee pukes up the nectar into another bee's mouth, which vomits it into the hive. You see, this nectar is first collected from a flower, where the bee sucks it up and stores it in a special stomach. Next, it starts to break the nectar down, splitting the sugars into separate parts to keep it fresh, before throwing it up over and over again to evaporate some of the water while keeping the sugars. When it gets back to the hive, it vomits it into a receiver bee's mouth, and that bee spits it into a wax cell. Then a group of them fan it out with their wings to evaporate even more water until the sugars are finally harvested as honey. They put marbles in a bowl before pouring Campbell's soup on top. Now the liquid slid between the marbles, but the meat and vegetables sat on top of them, making the soup look thicker than it really was. They were ordered to stop by the government, and they enforced rules requiring all companies to stop staging and instead show the real product. But some companies still paint grill marks on their meat or use toothpicks to hold burgers together, pushing the line without technically breaking it. If you get on your friend's shoulders, put on a trench coat, and try to buy one movie ticket, they'll obviously know what you're up to. You see, your weight would make your friend wobble as he walks, and since you still have a child's face, they'll know you're not an adult. Instead, you would need to build a special frame that would hold you up, taking the weight off your friend's shoulders, and a rigid pole would connect you to a harness connected to his hips. Mechanical leg braces would help lift your weight, allowing him to walk straight, and a hyper-real latex mask would change your face, making you look old enough to match the height. The beetle rolls its poop ball in a perfectly straight line in the dark, and you might think this is because it has night vision, but it's actually not even looking at where it's going. You see, once the ball is packed, the beetle climbs on top, spins around, and looks up. Now, its eyes are too weak to really see anything in the sky, but the glowing band of the Milky Way is so bright, the beetle can see it against the dark night sky. So it lines itself up with this glowing band and rolls straight ahead, stopping occasionally to make sure that it's still lined up. And when scientists blocked the beetles from seeing the stars, almost immediately they began wandering in circles. But under a clear night sky, they rolled straight ahead, using the galaxy as a map.
Wow.
They would push the horizontal bars on the shaft to turn it, which twisted the thick ropes around the base and lifted the cage off the ground as the lion slowly traveled up the chute. And once it reached the top, they would pull out a wooden beam holding up the secret trapdoor above. This opened the cage into a sunny arena, which made it look like the lion had appeared out of nowhere as it prepared to fight for its life in the Colosseum. Over 100 gears are fixed into place, and a small gear in the center of each one connects to the teeth of the one next to it. The first one starts turning, which spins the second wheel. But since the smaller gear has 10 times less teeth than the larger one, it has to rotate 10 times before the second gear rotates once. Now the second and third gears are connected the same way. The center of the second gear has 10 times less teeth than the third, meaning the third gear rotates once for every 10 turns of the second wheel and every 100 turns of the first wheel. By the time it reaches the 25th gear, the first gear has to rotate 1 septillion times for that wheel to turn, and it would have to make 10 quindecillion full rotations before the 50th gear made one full circle. Since each step is 10 times slower than the previous one, that means the last gear would be 1 Google slower than the first. That's 1 with 100 zeros behind it, meaning it would take longer to turn that gear than the entire age of the universe. His fingers would be slipped between the metal rings on the frame, turning the gun into brass knuckles. Now the cylinder held 6 rounds, each with a metal pin sticking out. When the hammer came back, it smacked the pin to fire a shot. But since there wasn't a barrel, the gun only worked at close range. So if he got too close to the enemy, he could just unfold the knife from the frame and use it for stabbing while punching with the brass knuckles. Then it all folds up neatly until he needs it again. When you pull the bookmark in this Bible, a tiny trigger would snap into place, firing the hidden gun inside. Now, the pages were first hollowed out to fit the gun, while the barrel was lined up with the top. So, when the bookmark was tugged, it would pull a mechanism that lit the gunpowder, firing the shot out of the top without ever opening the book. It originally belonged to the leader of Venice during a time of war, as a way to secretly protect himself no matter where he went, but he never used it, and today it's in a museum for everyone to see. Vinyl pellets are melted down into a puck before being placed between 2 metal stampers. These have tiny grooves matching the music, and when they press down, the vinyl is permanently printed on both sides. The edges are neatly trimmed, creating a perfectly round record, and when a needle moves along the grooves, it picks up the vibrations, turning them back into music through your speakers. He turned himself into the police, but they agreed to let him build his own prison. And when he was done, his prison included a soccer field, a sauna, and a waterfall. Inside was a jacuzzi, along with a fully stocked bar and a gym. It even had its own private nightclub. Guests would be smuggled in via supply trucks, allowing the so-called prisoner to host massive parties. But just over a year into his sentence, he escaped through a false wall, according to rumors, and he stayed hidden for another 17 months. He was pretending to be blind, while a hidden camera recorded nearby. Then he fell on the ground, waiting for someone to help, when an older man stopped to help him. Moments later, the influencer revealed that this was a kindness test. He handed the man $1,000, and the video went viral. A fundraiser even raised $100,000 for this kind stranger. But weeks later, a woman asked him for a ride, and as he dropped her off, others were waiting. They tied him up and threw him in the back of a car. Then they drove around town, forcing him to withdraw the money from ATMs.
Wow.
Then they set his car on fire, leaving him trapped inside. Witnesses pulled him out just in time, and police later revealed that it had all been planned by his own nephew.
What?
He stumbled across a bear cub and its mother.
What's
But as he
Gumball?
pulled out his bear spray, the mother ran toward him. He dropped to the ground and covered his neck just before the bear
Oh,
attacked, biting him and
do you
flailing
like
him
you
around.
pretend
And
like
as she
you
bit
dead?
down on
Right?
his hands, he heard
Oh!
now he thought it was his skull, crushed, but it was actually the bear biting down on the spray and
Oh!
making it explode.
So
She
cool.
and her cub
Oh.
ran off, and the man crawled to safety. And when rangers arrived, he convinced them not to
Yes.
kill the bear,
No.
saying she was only trying to protect her child. She injected bleach into the IV of one of her patients.
Yeah.
As it entered their body, it began
Evil,
burning the
evil.
veins from the inside. This eventually caused their organs to shut down, killing them.
Insurance?
Now, 4 other
Insurance.
patients had unexpectedly
Insurance.
died in the same way. And when the hospital began to investigate, a witness claimed that she saw the nurse injecting something into the bags. When tested, the IV bags showed traces of bleach. The nurse was arrested and sentenced to life in prison. When you peel a cinnamon
It's
roll
okay.
can, the seam holding it shut loosens.